Today, we're digging into a massive Medicaid fraud investigation out of Minnesota. One that could shake up how the state, and maybe even the nation, handles housing assistance through taxpayer-funded health care. Now, if you thought the Feeding Our Future or Medicaid scandal was bad, well, they're all terrible. But just wait till you hear about how much money was funneled into so-called Housing Stabilization services and how little oversight went with it. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Nellie Miranda. In July 2020, Minnesota became the first state in the country to offer a Medicaid benefit called Housing Stabilization Services. It was supposed to help people with disabilities, mental illness, or addiction. Folks who are homeless or at risk of losing housing. It'll help them get support in finding and keeping a roof over their heads. Noble cause, right? Well, the program was expected to cost just $2.6 million a year. But within months, cost ballooned. In 2021, spending hits $21 million. In 2024, it soared to over $104 million. And in just the first half of 2025, another $61 million gone. That's over $300 million in less than 5 years for a program that projected a 5-year cost of $15 million. And here's the kicker. Most of that money came with barely any oversight. Just, here's the funds, do what thou wilt with it. Ridiculous.
Court documents are spelling out what investigators call an explosion of exploitation in Minnesota. Those documents detail a spike in a sector investigators say is ripe for fraud. Housing Stability Service claims went from an early estimate of $2.6 million in state dollars to a program paying out more than $100 million in 2024.
8 different spots across the metro saw searches today. Now, documents say that each one is connected to a scheme to defraud Minnesota's Housing Stabilization Service. Now, this program uses Medicaid money to help people struggling find a place to live.
Now, fast forward to July 17th, 2025. Federal agents raided over a dozen businesses and private homes across the Twin Cities, tied to at least 14 housing providers accused of defrauding the system. These raids hit places like Brilliant Mind Services, Liberty Plus LLC, Leo Human Services, Falad Care Inc., and several more. And the allegations: fake billing, no actual services provided, clients who had no idea their names were being used to bill Medicaid for tens of thousands of dollars. And in some cases, one single client was billed $30,000 to $50,000. And over a 16-month period, 14 providers each billed more than $1.2 million from Medicaid. If y'all don't put these people under the jail.
What was your initial reaction holding the position that you do when you heard about this?
Sadly, I was not surprised.
Court docs lay out the details behind this latest investigation. Minnesota's Housing Stabilization Services program began in 2020, and according to a warrant, those committing fraud would, quote, recruit Medicaid-eligible individuals who are experiencing housing instability and sign them up. Investigators say providers billed the government for services and, quote, immediately began receiving large Medicaid payouts. But the supposed clients, many of whom were, quote, struggling with drug addiction, received, quote, little or no help or services. It's an issue sparking concern on both sides of the aisle.
So here's the real question. Where was the Department of Human Services while this was happening? Why weren't these skyrocketing costs raising red flags? And why weren't providers, many of whom operated out of shared office buildings, being vetted? According to reports, nearly 1,600 providers are now part of this housing stabilization program, and many of them were approved with minimal screening. This is what happens when you combine big government with little accountability. And folks, let's be real. This isn't Minnesota's first scandal. Remember the Feeding Our Future case? That was $250 million in stolen funds from COVID-era food programs. Then earlier this year, over 85 autism clinics across the state were put under investigation for suspected Medicaid billing fraud.
This is an area where we've seen a lot of fraud.
It's a case some say parallels problems the state has seen before, including the Feeding Our Future scheme, which federal prosecutors called the biggest pandemic-era fraud in the country, and a new investigation into Medicaid fraud at Minnesota autism centers. What was your initial reaction holding the position that you do when you heard about this?
Sadly, I was not surprised.
And now we're adding housing stabilization services to the list. So what's the pattern? A good sounding progressive initiative gets pushed through, the funding gets rubber stamped, and next thing you know, the system gets hijacked by bad actors who see free money and zero enforcement. Republican lawmakers are sounding the alarm.
While lawmakers say a new office to handle these issues needs to be reconsidered after getting cut during special session budget negotiations.
We need to take this more seriously and reconsider the proposal to have an office of Inspector General that is statewide and enterprise-wide and truly independent of the executive branch.
Another disappointing instance of fraud here in Minnesota. We've had a record amount of fraud in Minnesota, and quite frankly, I think Minnesotans are just getting sick of it.
Minnesota's Department of Human Services put out a statement saying in part fraud in public programs hurts the people we are working to help. By coordinating the administrative oversight of DHS, Minnesota is able to bring those committing Medicaid fraud to justice.
Representative Kristen Robbins said it best. This is a wake-up call. She's demanding real-time audits, fingerprinting of business owners, and caps on how much providers can bill per client. Makes sense, right? But Democrats on the Oversight Committee, they're dragging their feet. Some even oppose an independent office of Inspector General, claiming it would add too much bureaucracy. Let me get this straight. We got hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars vanishing into thin air, and more oversight is somehow the problem. It's nonsense. Here's what you need to take away from this. Number one, big government doesn't equal smart government. Number two, programs without safeguards are just invitations to steal. And number three, if we don't start holding agencies and lawmakers accountable, this will keep happening. Housing assistance shouldn't be a cash grab for shady nonprofits and paper-pushing shell companies. It should be a lifeline for people who truly need help. But until the fraud is cut off at the root, all we're doing is pouring taxpayer money into a bottomless pit. Federal charges are likely coming. Some of these providers could face prison time. But the real battle is legislative. And it's on voters to demand action. Shouldn't taxpayers get to ask, where did our money go? And who let this happen? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And as always, if honest commentary brings you value, please make sure you like and subscribe, as it really helps support the channel, and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.